Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 8 of Chainsaw Man. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So if I remember correctly, everybody is still sort of recovering from just the utter horror and depravity of Himeno essentially vomiting in Denji's mouth. And, as bad as fighting the Eternity Devil was, I feel like that was much, much worse. The Vomit Devil's gotta be, pretty darn powerful now. So I don't know what precisely the rationale behind any of this was in-universe, but Himeno, I guess, has decided that she's going to take care of Denji. I don't recall him being drunk or anything as a result of him being underage, but, the poor guy's certainly not doing too well, and Himeno, being an adult, I guess, has seen fit to wrangle him. Presumably Aki is taking the night off or something, who really knows? But I feel like some of this is, expanding on, implied material. It's interesting, because I don't recall there being too much substance to this scene right here. But, they cut out stuff like the Muscle Devil earlier, but it seems like they're sort of deviating from the manga to add a little bit here. Not that it's a bad thing necessarily, but I'm wondering, I don't know, why would they get rid of source material just to make their own stuff? That strikes me as, I don't know, a bit presumptive that, ooh, I'm a better writer, I can, do my own thing. I mean, it's not always that that's not the case, but I feel like more often than not, if you're messing around with somebody else's story, you're sort of, risking trouble. Oh dear, it seems like Himeno's not stopping. Turns out going to the bar was just pre-gaming. Oh dear, I think she's about to commit a crime. This is not good. I mean, I don't think Denji is particularly bothered by it, but, it seems like one of those things that when Himeno sort of, sleeps off all the booze and sort of, wakes up and comes to her senses, that this is going to be, well, to put it lightly, a bit of an HR disaster. Alright, so you know what? Himeno is, despite being sloppy drunk, she's speaking some truth here, I think she's basically being, a surrogate for the author, and then she's saying, something objectively true, you guys can do better. Makima is not the be-all and end-all. Of course, there's also the added implication of there are better women, like me, for instance, who happens to be reclining on this bed right next to you. Hint, hint. Yeah, we're not getting away from the uncomfortable topic here. Himeno is proposing something alright, and she's being rather explicit. So, on the one hand, this could certainly be precisely what Denji wants, but on the other hand, I feel like he's still going to be holding on to what Makima said about how, like, if it's not a person you care about, then it's not going to be a good experience. I mean, he's already sort of having second thoughts about it. Not that he's really protesting too much, I mean, I have to say, like, the strongest point he's making here is, like, this chick puked on me, so why do I want to really associate with her any further? And that's a good point, but I don't know, what's a little bit of vomit between lovers when you get down to it? I feel like we're almost spending an inordinate amount of time on what is essentially like a little brief thing. Man, I was gonna say, she's like, ooh, is there something in your pocket? I thought things were about to get really steamy. Woo boy. It turns out Denji actually did have something in his pocket, and probably for the best that was in fact the case. So, I mean, it's good he actually had something in his pocket and Himeno wasn't fiddling with his Winky, but on the other hand, it's a little memento from Makima, which is, I mean, dubious at best. Makima, she's a complex character. I mean, Himeno obviously doesn't seem all that keen on her, if only because she's romantic competition. I don't know. I'm wondering how things are gonna go if they're gonna, like, add on to the scene. Man, Makima's raising a rather horrific point here. Like, I doubt you'll ever forget how that vomit tasted. Like, that is really horrible. Well, it seems as though Denji has escaped Himeno's clutches unmolested. Although he does have to resort to sleeping on the floor. I mean, probably a small price to pay for Denji considering what he was living like before. But I do find it interesting that he's sort of apologizing to Pochita. Essentially saying, like, I gypped you out of a new experience. Sorry, dude. Because I know, like, part of this fundamental promise we have is that I'll experience all the cool things in life, and you, by proxy, get to experience it, too, as a part of me. And so, I mean, it's not like a strict bargain, but I just think it's interesting. It's like, this experience can wait, and it'll be better for having waited. Despite Himeno saying, like, it's probably for the best and I would have gone to jail, I feel like there is a bit of a regretful tone, or a disgruntled tone. Like, she was like, it's like, well, it's a good thing I didn't do it, but she doesn't really mean that. And that's probably due to Denji saying, my first time's gonna be with Miss Makima. That's, it's not a low blow, but that's gotta sting a little bit, saying, like, yeah, I'm gonna turn you down because I've got my eyes on somebody you don't particularly like. So this is an aspect of Chainsaw Man that I find kind of interesting, in that there's a little bit of romance here. Himeno has proposed to Denji that they sort of work together for mutual benefit. If Denji can get Himeno and Aki together, she'll help him with Makima. And I guess it really seems like they both kind of get what they want in the end. But I don't know. Like, I think the romance adds a little interesting spice, even if it's not a big fixture of Chainsaw Man. I mean, I think it's kind of lifelike in that regard, in that, you know, your life isn't solely revolving around dating and stuff like that, but, you know, it's something that happens, like, on occasion, a little bit at a time, or a lot at a time, but it's not like the consistent sole fixation of your life, you know? So it seems like Makima has to travel to Kyoto to talk to her superiors, it would seem. And if that weren't enough, it seems like there might be some shady business going on the train. I mean, I think shady business is a bit of an understatement when Makima and her associate here have just been riddled with holes. Man, you know, I thought that this particular scene would have been a cliffhanger, kind of like it was in the manga. I feel like one of the volumes, the Tankoban volumes, it ends with the chapter that ends with that scene. And that it's just sort of like the middle of the episode, I think, is interesting. Because I guess one of the important things about this scene here is that nobody really knows what had happened. Like, obviously Makima had just, like, took a couple bullets to the head and torso, and Denji and company don't really know about it. And meanwhile, it seems like a bunch of other people are going to be receiving the same treatment as well. It's also rather important that these are guns here, because I believe some of the lore of the series is that the manufacture of guns is now, like, highly, highly regulated, if allowed at all. And, you know, assuming, like, you don't just find a gun or buy one on the black market, the only way to get one would be to make a contract with the gun devil, implying that, you know, you are really bent on some evil ends. So, you know, I can't speak for everybody, but when I'm in a restaurant eating a meal with friends or family or whatever, and somebody just sort of, like, strikes up conversation, that always strikes me as a bit weird. So this guy's saying that, you know, I don't really like the food here. And everybody else is like, you know, the food's fine, but this guy just wants to keep up the conversation. So, you know, that should be a pretty big red flag here. You know, my granddad was with the Yakuza, and he was always really good to me. He was honorable, you know, he didn't really kill too many women and children. So, you know, Denji has killed a particularly old member of the Yakuza, so, yeah, there we have it. Seems like this guy's got a bone to pick with Denji. So this is definitely not a good situation to be in. At this point, I don't think we're quite aware of just how resilient Denji truly is. I mean, we've seen him, like, have limbs torn off, and he's sort of survived that. But I think this is the first time he's really been, like, shot in the head or otherwise injured to that degree. Okay, so this is decidedly not good. You know, Aki's used the Fox Demon to swallow that guy. And the Fox Demon's like, dude, what did you just put in my mouth? It's not human. It's not a devil. It's not good. And at face value, this guy, he seems to be very similar to Denji in like, I guess as a foil, you know, similarities. There are similarities between the two of them, but there are also key differences. And the idea is that you sort of compare and contrast them. You know, rather than chainsaws, he has swords, but he has the same sort of format here in that the swords pop out of his arms and one pops out of his head. So Denji's finally using this sword that he's been carrying. It's actually a nail, and it seems to have, I guess, an extra little bit of significance to it. You know, the way Aki commands the curse to finish him off, it seems like it might be the cursed devil or something like that. I'd imagine that would be generally pretty powerful, you know. Those who are especially superstitious would certainly be afraid of being cursed. I mean, ultimately, it seems to have done the job. Unfortunately, you know, the situation's not particularly good. Himeno, I believe she's been shot, so she's not doing too well. But the plot's getting pretty darn thick. You know, that guy mentioned the gun devil. He had a gun. I mean, he shot Denji through the head, lest we forget, and he hasn't gotten up yet. Unfortunately, the Yakuza's grandson, he doesn't appear to be working alone. I mean, certainly he's not working alone if there are other people with guns, it's just they're not all together right now. Unfortunately, it seems like whatever the cursed devil did, it wasn't enough to put him down for good. Yeah, this is definitely not a good situation when this guy is sort of conceding that the reason he got his ass handed to him was that, you know, he just sort of underestimated Aki and he wasn't fighting seriously. You know, that definitely doesn't bode well for everyone. I mean, there you have it. You know, just like that, he sort of like teleports behind you, nothing personal, kid. Yeah, this really isn't good. I mean, I think Aki's basically burned through every tool at his disposal. The Fox Devil couldn't do anything. The Curse Devil couldn't do anything permanent. Himeno is in no fit state to fight. Denji's out of commission. And, quite frankly, Power is probably prepared to abandon everyone at the drop of a hat. So despite how bad the situation is, Himeno feels that she needs to do something. If she's already sort of like bleeding from the mouth, I do believe that that is a sign of like a pretty serious internal injury. So she seems to be of the belief that at this point she's already dead, so she might as well lay all her cards on the table. She had already sacrificed an eye for the power the Ghost Devil gave her, but she'll get a whole lot more power if she sacrifices everything she has. So, on the one hand, it's definitely fatal, but I guess the hope here is that the Ghost Devil will be enough. One of the things I really like about Chainsaw Man is that there's no clear, definite hierarchy. You know, ghosts are scary, but a whole lot of things are scary, and they're scary in different amounts to different people, so it's not necessarily clear that a ghost would be stronger than a sword, but I guess Himeno's sort of hoping here that that will be the case. I do have to say that the ghost devil, as it's being presented here, is rather unsettling. You know, it's just sort of like a mass of limbs and like a rather creepy face with eyes sewn shut. Like, I mean, that's not what I picture when I think of a ghost, but I mean, it's certainly unsettling. So ultimately, it was kind of for nothing. The snake devil just sort of like bit the ghost devil's head off, and I have to say I can certainly sympathize with the snake devil being rather fearsome. Don't particularly like them myself. But the unfortunate upshot of all of this is that not only has Himeno sacrificed herself, but in the end it was kind of meaningless. Man, this is a killer scene to end on. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.